Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter, and be sure to check out our segment with Surrey from the Draft Brawl podcast. He breaks down the Chargers sideline. A lot of great information packed in there, especially on Justin Herbert and Kalen Ballage, who we might be seeing a lot of this week as it appears. Paul, the Dolphins are favored by, as we're doing the show, 1.5 only against. So you've got a 5-3 Dolphins team against a 2-6 Chargers team, and the Dolphins are favored by 1.5 here. A little surprising for you?
Yes and no. I mean, if you look down at the Chargers have lost a lot of games in the closing minutes. They've played a lot of good teams tight and a lot of bad teams tight, and really been a team that's gone to a lot of shootouts in their previous few weeks. I mean, it's not surprising, but I don't expect the score to be as close as that line.
The 1.5 line, it was 3 at one point, and typically when there's a lot of bets placed on the Chargers with that line starts to decrease. So it's 1.5, and it wouldn't be surprised if this was a pick'em game here before kickoff. But either way, there's a game to be played. The Dolphins have been underdogs a lot and have blown the other team out this year. So looking at the matchup, everything is about Tua against Justin Herbert in this contest. We talked about Herbert a lot in the pre-draft, and we did not want Justin Herbert to be the number 5 overall pick for the Dolphins. I wanted Tua. You wanted to go a different route from the quarterback position entirely at the time. But I got to say, and I'll say this loud and clear, as of right now, I was wrong on Justin Herbert. I mean, you take a look at what he's done this year. He looks like an absolute star. My two biggest concerns with him heading into the draft were I didn't think he felt the game, and I thought his ball placement throughout the game was bad. And then you sprinkle into that at Oregon, the bigger the game got, the worse that he played. But he steps onto the NFL stage, and you can't ignore the stat line here. I mean, 181 for 269, 60, almost a 68% completion percentage, over 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, quarterback rating of almost 105. I mean, what can you say, Paul?
I can say he's close to what I thought he was. He's got some pretty stud receivers. He tries to chuck it deep over and over again, even when it doesn't make sense. He's going to keep you in games, but he is Josh Allen. Is really the ultimate compliment and insult that I can give the guy. He's a guy that's going to get you close, get you right there, even if the game's a 48-45 shootout, and flub it at the end. That is Justin Herbert.
I don't agree with that because I mean, you look at the last 2 games they've played, and you're talking about they lost last week 31-26 to the Raiders, and last play of the game he puts the ball on Mike Williams' hands. And Mike Williams doesn't come away with it. He puts the ball in Donald Parham's hands. He doesn't. It's called a touchdown, and then it's reversed. I mean, and you look at the game before that, the Broncos were down. The Chargers were beating the Broncos 30-14, and the Broncos come back and score 3 touchdowns in the closing minutes. I mean, I have a hard time because I've heard what you just said. I've heard as well from a lot of people, but I have a hard time buying that he gets to the end, they score 30 points on offense. He has an all-star game, but he just doesn't have the will to pull it out.
Well, and what I'll say to that is this game may be critical in changing my mind. When I looked the past 2 weeks, he wasn't playing defenses that really were getting after the quarterback, even though they were still putting pressure on him. And he didn't play a secondary like what Miami has, not in any way, shape, or form. There were a lot of balls I saw the last 2 weeks that really, I think X comes away with at least 2 of those. I think Byron maybe finally gets on that interception count. I think Bobby McCain makes him pay. And if you add to that the fact that Miami's going to blitz a hell of a lot more out of that cover zero look than what you saw from the Raiders and the Broncos the past couple of weeks, they were rushing four guys and getting through that offensive line, and that's with Brian Bulaga before he went down. It's I'm looking at this, and I think Herbert's going to get battered a lot more than he has been the past couple of weeks, and those chuck it up balls that he likes to throw, I think that's going to get a lot messier in terms of how that works out for him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on a couple things you said there. Number one, the Chargers' offensive line isn't great to begin with, and last week you have Brian Bulaga who leaves the game with a back injury. Trey Turner is dealing with a groin injury. Both of those players probably going to play, but they're going to play injured, and there's a possibility they could miss. If Bulaga misses that game with a back injury, you've got a major mismatch for in the Dolphins' favor. You've got Emmanuel Ogbah and Shaq Lawson at defensive end going up against Sam Tevy at right tackle and Trey Turnstile Pipkins at left tackle. So you've got that would be a major thing in the Dolphins' favor there.
It really, really would, and I mean, it starts before that. I think it was September when their center, who shall remain nameless, went down for the year. And they're just a mess. They're absolutely just a mess on that offensive line. And what Miami's been showing in terms of their confusing pressures the past few weeks, maybe they're rushing their D line, maybe they're rushing their linebackers and dropping their D line. You just don't know. And given that fact and what that's going to do to a rookie here, not being able to recognize the coverage because hell, it's almost like the defense doesn't know who's dropping some plays. And I don't see it being a game that their offense can get rolling, especially with Kalen Balaj here at running back, where you're going to force them to be almost one dimensional. I mean, if we can force them to run the ball with Kalen Balaj over and over again, trying to get something, this is our game.
15 carries for 69 yards for Balaj last week for the Chargers. His first game playing for the Chargers. 4.6 yards a carry, something we would have dreamed about when he was here. Yeah, but at running back, they're not going to have Justin Jackson, who's. I mean, they've got Josh Kelly, Justin Jackson, Kalen Balaj, who are kind of just a guy. Balaj, based on what we saw in Miami, is less than just a guy. But Justin Jackson is going to be missing in this game. Balaj is going to be called up. Could actually start the game. As far as the Chargers and putting points on the board, I mean, you look at the last 5 games now. They're averaging 30.8 points per game over the last 5 games. And so it doesn't they've faced bad defenses, they've faced good defenses against the Bucks and the Saints are a little hit and miss, but and Herbert every game 26, 29, 31, 35 points. I see this game regardless coming down to the wire because that's how the Chargers have played everybody.
It could, but what I look at too is like you look back at that Raiders game. They were playing a stupid ass defense that lets you move up and down the field. They had on a number of plays 4 guys at the line of scrimmage, and then your next closest guy to the line of scrimmage was about 5-6 yards off the ball. And it's so even if they blitzed, they were running from so far away that they couldn't have a chance of getting to Justin Herbert, let alone disturbing anything. And that also leads you to allowing a terrible running back like Kalen Balaj to actually look like somebody decent. When you're going 5-on-4 up front, you damn well better win those matchups. And the Chargers line didn't fully win those matchups either. I don't think Herbert's seen, at least not in a while, a look like what Miami's going to throw at him.
I agree. And I watched the Chargers Raiders game as well, and I rewatched it too, and I noticed on both sides of the ball that you've got a very vanilla looking defense. The Raiders with Paul Gunther and the Chargers with that cover three look with Gus Bradley. They play their cornerbacks quite a bit off the ball. They put a lot of emphasis on their linebackers to cover a lot of ground, especially in coverage. And on the defensive line, what we haven't, I can't believe we're 10 minutes into the show and we haven't brought it up. Joey Bosa is going to miss this game with a concussion. And we're talking about a Pro Bowl defensive end. He would have lined up against Austin Jackson or Jesse Davis at the left tackle spot and likely won that matchup. Now you're going to have a front line that's more designed to stop the run. They're going to have on really a four-man front on every down because they don't give a lot of different looks. So you're going to have Jerry Tillery, Justin Jones, Linval Joseph, and Melvin Ingram as their front four going against the Dolphins offensive line. So without Bosa there, I think the advantage switches from advantage Chargers to possibly advantage Dolphins.
I do too. And again, it's their D line. The fact that they only rush four and what Miami's been able to do up front with that group of meat monsters is just outstanding. And they don't blitz a lot. And I want to go a little bit further on what you just said. Not only are they very vanilla, I saw a lot of plays in critical moments, and this is not just on the Chargers. This was on the Chargers and the Raiders, the Chargers and the Broncos, where even in critical moments, I didn't see 11 guys playing hard on either side of the ball on almost any play I watched. There were anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 guys on a given play. And granted, it was never Herbert. It was never Herbert. He was trying his ass off the whole time. But between 2 and 6 guys on almost any play, that watching that tape, they were half-assing. And
Yeah,
it's just it was so lackadaisical watching the last 2 weeks of Chargers games against the Raiders and the Broncos. These were three teams that looked like they just half the team looked like they could just give a damn. And I've got to look back at the coaching aspect here.
yeah,
I yeah,
right. Anthony Lynn has been with the Chargers for several years, and it seems like every year they're getting worse. And typically, if you get halfway through the season, you lose some emotional games, and they get so conservative throughout the game too. The Chargers, from what I've seen, so it the message starts to get stale. We've seen that with Adam Gase. We've seen that with Tony Sproul. That message starts to get stale in that third or fourth year if things just aren't turning. So when I look at the Chargers roster, I see a star in Justin Herbert. I see a receiving core with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Hunter Henry. That's fantastic. And then after that, partly because of injuries and partly because of just lack of effort at times, I don't see a very good team outside the quarterback and the wide receiver position of the Chargers.
yeah, and that just feeds right into Miami's hands. And another aspect that we don't really end up talking about a lot on our game previews, but I'm going to this week. The Chargers coverage units are not that good on special teams. The Chargers special teams overall are not that good. They don't maintain any form of discipline on kickoff coverage, and they're not great in punt coverage. So this is a game where yet again Miami's special teams, which have been, you know, mentioned less than they should be by folks, but in reality have been such a critical aspect of everything Miami's done this year. Miami's owned field position due to their special teams units. And I see a team that we may see Grant take one to the house yet again this week, whether it's on a kickoff or a punt return. And Miami's going to start off with favorable field position, which is going to allow the Chargers to possibly put up more yards than the Dolphins in this one. They very well might.
His special teams has been phenomenal this year. I mean, I thought when the Dolphins lost Darren Rizzi, uh, 2 years ago that this unit would become a lot worse with Danny Crossman. It's gotten even better. I mean, if there's a kicker and a punter in the league better than Jason Sanders and Matt Hawk right now, I'd like to see him. At Jakeem Grant, I'd be shocked if he doesn't make the Pro Bowl this year. Their coverage units have been phenomenal. They score points on special teams. Yeah, a lot of hidden yardage there. So I think it's very appropriate to bring that up with how well they're playing. But going back to Jakeem Grant, it'll be fascinating in this one to see if he actually returns kicks. I know he'll return punts, but Noah Igbenogany returned 2 kicks last week, and he's got some speed. And the reason for that is because Jakeem Grant, with Preston Williams on injured reserve this week, is going to be that number 2 wide receiver opposite Devontae Parker. So there's going to be more on his plate. Instead of playing, 25 to 30 snaps at wide receiver, we could be seeing Jakeem Grant playing 50 snaps instead.
I'm actually okay with that. I really am. It's Jakeem Grant is a Tua style receiver. He seems to be reinvigorated or just see the ball better from Tua or be more prepared because he's getting fed a little bit more with Tua in there. I'm not sure what the exact situation is, but I like what I'm seeing here. I don't think we see him fully off these kick return teams because he's just too goddamn dangerous. But, we may see Noah Igbenogany return a few kickoffs to give Jakeem a break. I think Jakeem Grant could go off in this game. And I'm glad you talked about him playing receiver because even with Preston Williams on IR, the Chargers secondary and their front four and the way they deploy their vanilla ass defense, you can completely exploit them with a pretty flexible lineup with Miami's receivers if you go 5 wide and maybe get Mike Gesicki going again. Because I just don't think that they can hang with the weird and creative talent and skill sets that Miami's receivers have. That's not to say these guys are all pros, but they have a lot of mismatched switchblade type weapons, and you can even jet sweep off of that if you can force them to go into like a dime coverage or a quarter coverage and have Lynn Bowden take it one way, have Jakeem Grant take it the other way. And you just got to beat their front four to get your 5, 6, 10, 12 yards, getting these guys in space.
Yeah, I think that Jakeem Grant, instead of Preston Williams in the lineup, allows you to be a lot more unpredictable if Chan Gailey is willing to do that. I mean, I think it'd be, if you have Jakeem Grant out there, let's say for 45 to 50 snaps in this game, I think it's criminal if you don't do 2 to 4 either end arounds or fake end arounds in this game. Because if you do that, you can open up the middle of the offensive line because those defenders are going to play a little bit wider because they've got to account for that play. So that's something I'll be looking for in this one. Yeah, but I'm very excited about the possibility of lining up the personnel of Jakeem Grant, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, and also Salvon Ahmed at running back. So Salvon Ahmed, excuse me.
Savon. Savon Ahmed.
Salvon Ahmed, thank you. But so I expect Gesicki to have a big game. He had 2 games where he had uh, before the Cardinals game, the 2 games they play, I think with Jets and Rams, he had 1 catch for 8 yards combined in those 2 games. This past week against the Cardinals, 3 catches for 42 yards, starting to get some rhythm there with Tua. I expect Gesicki to have a big game here, whether that's lining up at cornerback or against cornerbacks, which he'd probably be matched up against Michael Davis. And that's an area where he's got a massive height advantage of about 8 inches. Or if he's going down the seam against these linebackers like rookie Kenneth Murray or like the safeties, Rayshawn Jenkins and Nasir Adderley, all of whom are struggling in coverage right now.
Yeah, it's again, I don't care what they've done score wise the past few weeks. I don't see them being able to match. I think Miami matches up so favorably with these guys. I really do. Yeah, they're going to get their scores. Um, Herbert is going to chuck it up over the top, and he's probably going to complete 1 or 2. Miami's aggressive coverage is going to allow that to happen, and we have to be prepared for that as fans. We saw it with Christian Kirk last week, and we'll see it occasionally again. But if you can shut down their top or I'm sorry, we're talking about the offense. It's just there's so many areas with this that I
No,
just
go
see
with it.
Miami
Yeah.
matching up well. Um, but really, I don't see anybody that can stick with Jakeem Grant in their secondary. I just don't. And if you do manage to double team, helping out over the top and coming up, accounting for him with two guys, Devontae Parker's going to eat you alive. And then you've got Gesicki, who's just his skill set is to be a mismatch. It's he runs like a goddamn gazelle and he can catch everything thrown his way. Just don't ask him to block, and you don't have to when they're only rushing four guys and really only rushing two of those guys because their tackles aren't really trying to come up field on most plays. So they're really rushing two guys.
Right. You're uh, yeah, I mean, I think there are favorable mismatches all over the place. What I like about Jakeem Grant now at wide receiver, I like him 100 times more now that two is in the lineup instead of Fitzpatrick. Like we've talked about, Fitzpatrick plays better with those king-sized receivers, with Devontae Parker, with Preston Williams. With Tua, the ball comes in, gets out of his hands quickly. It comes in at a lower catch point, which obviously favors Jakeem Grant. And you've even seen Jakeem Grant get into his route, get some spacing. Tua sees him quickly, gets the ball to him, and Grant's even at 5'7", he's able to box out because he's pretty powerful for how small he is. So yeah, that I like that personnel. And running back too. I mean, Matt Breida is unlikely to play in this game. Um, Obviously, Miles Gaskin's on IR for another couple weeks. I mean, if Savon Ahmed is not playing just about every snap at running back, I don't know what you're doing.
I'll tell you what you're doing. You're getting DeAndre Washington in and seeing what you've got there because he can also change things up and be a threat in the receiving game coming out of the backfield, which is a nightmare for the Chargers D. And also, if he can regain his 2019 form, he's going to be effective in the running game as well. And don't get me wrong, I love Savon Ahmed. I want to see more of him. But I don't dislike DeAndre Washington either in the role that he can provide, as well as, oh God, I'm blanking on the
Patrick
name
Laird.
right now. Patrick Laird. Having Patrick Laird come in and occasionally just be a threat receiving out of the backfield. He's not a huge threat running the ball. He's never going to be a huge threat running the ball. He just creates interesting scenarios with his receiving ability and does well with it. So there's a role for that. Like
Yeah,
I see the running back position doing well. I don't see anybody getting 100 yards in this game at running back, but I think as a team we collectively go over 100 in this one based on the way the Chargers line up their defense and the talent they have.
I'm very open to DeAndre Washington, who's going to play his first game as a Dolphin likely, and Patrick Laird being there on third down. Laird had a big catch last week. That 16-yarder that ended up getting the Dolphins a field goal there before halftime. I think that was the one. But anyway, DeAndre Washington, one of his biggest strengths is pass blocking in his career. He's not doesn't stand out in any other area, but he'll get what's blocked too. Savon Ahmed is a running back that I think gets from point A to point B quickly. And if you can mash those guys up front with this big offensive line, then I think you're gonna have some success there as the game goes along. So I want Ahmed to get 15 to 20 carries in this game, and I'm fine with Laird or Washington not getting even 5.
I think that there's a possibility that we see 15 to 20 out of Ahmed, but I think we probably see 10 touches at least for Washington and Laird combined. I think it's going to favor Washington in that matchup, maybe 6 or 7 to 3 or 4. But I do think that they're going to have an effective minor role in this one. But again, at the end of the day, the running backs will be there to keep things honest. I'll even throw one of my bold predictions in here early on the episode. I think Jakeem Grant gets 50 rushing yards in this game.
On how many carries?
2.
Okay, two for 50. Okay, yeah, I could certainly see that happening.
Yep.
On the defensive side of the ball, just to go, because we haven't really touched on it. Christian Wilkins, Kyle Van Noy, unlikely to play in this game with COVID. I mean, I think it's about 99%. We'll know probably right after we sign off this podcast. But at the time, we're assuming they're not going to play here.
So just so you know, Flores actually came out and said they're not.
Okay, thank you. So the way I look at this now, you're going to see a lot more of Zach Sealer on the field. You're going to see a lot more of Andrew Van Ginkel on the field. I think that could serve to the Dolphins' advantage in certain looks. And look, Kyle Van Noy and Christian Wilkins are losses. There's no doubt about that. I feel good about the guys that are replacing him. My bigger concern is if Van Ginkel and Sealer are playing so many snaps, is the depth behind them going to be able to step up?
I think so. I think, in all honesty, as much as I like what Kyle Van Noy's been for this defense this year, if there's a game he's gonna miss that I'm really in favor of, it's probably this one. And the reason I say that is you're going to look at the next gen stats and then they're going to say Justin Herbert is phenomenal against the blitz this year. He's just doing outstanding things. But factored into that is a point I brought up earlier for some of the folks that have joined since. The Raiders, I'm going to use them as the example last week. They had four guys up front. Everybody else was over 5 yards off the ball. And whoever was blitzing got a running start, like right before the snap, so you could see his ass coming from a mile away and you could account for him. So whoop-de-doo, he did okay against the blitz. Let's see how he does this week. And you look at Kamal Grugier-Hill. You look at Landon Roberts. Those two, whichever one sees an elevated role here with Kyle Van Noy out, maybe both, have been an absolute missile coming out of left field on creative blitzes that you don't see coming anytime they've been asked to do it this year. It hasn't been something where they run up and raise their hand and go, yo, I'm blitzing and I'm about 4 yards off the ball, so please account for me here. You know where I'm at and where the opening's going to be. It's right there. That's not what we've got in those guys. So if Kyle Van Noy is going to miss against a rookie quarterback, you've got two guys that can just come through like a freaking freight train and find the gap. This is the game for it. Now, Christian Wilkins, that is going to be a little more missed because he does provide a lot up front. But at the same time, they elevated Benito Jones, a guy that I drafted for them in a lot of mock drafts this year. He's not Christian Wilkins by any stretch. But again, he's solid up front, and Raekwon Davis has been coming on in recent weeks, as much shit as we gave the guy earlier this year. So,
yeah,
I'm okay.
I look at Sealer and Raekwon Davis. If they can play, 50 snaps again and do the job they did against the Cardinals when Chase Edmonds was held to 70 yards on 25 carries. I mean, he averaged less than 3 yards a carry, came into the game averaging over 6 yards a carry. Fantastic job there. Benito Jones rotating in, it's going to be a big game for him. It's going to be a big game for Jason Strobridge too. I'm a little bit worried about those two guys playing meaningful snaps as the game wears on. But what I like about the defense too is that it is a culture now of next man up, and players having a specific role, embracing that role, and outperforming those expectations. So finally, before we get to our predictions here too, just a couple. Go ahead.
Let me just hop back in there real quick too, because there's one more point I want to make on the D line here. It's Christian Wilkins has been very good this year, but at the end of the day, he has not been our best defensive tackle. I don't care what PFF says. I don't care what anything out there says. Our best defensive tackle this year, snap in and snap out, has been that big guy built like Sully from Monsters Inc., and that's Zach Sealer. Zach Sealer has been our best run-stuffing defensive tackle. He has been our best chase-down defensive tackle, and he's gotten the most push upfield of any defensive tackle on this team, hands down, play in, play out, consistently. So
yeah, and he sure has. And you look at the play last week. I mean, the 4th and 1 stop. That's Zach Sealer making that play. And, I got a lot of flack from people when I said the Dolphins are a better defense without Davin Godchaux. And it's not a slight on Godchaux. Godchaux's a rotational player. He's 6'3", 300 pounds. You get him out of the lineup and you have just Raekwon Davis and Zach Sealer just pushing forward. they have that length and they have that ability to just stonewall the guard that makes a major difference. And I think what you're seeing that there, and it's why Brian Flores' defense and why these historical Patriots, Bill Belichick style defenses do better with these giants up front instead of pass rushers. So, Paul, finally, before we get to our predictions here, at quarterback for the Chargers, Justin Herbert goes up against Tua in this game, but it's not really that matchup. It's Tua against the Dolphins defense, and I think you're right. I don't think he's seen this defense in the last couple of weeks, and um, looking at it, Jalen Guyton has played about 87% of snaps last week as their third receiver. He is one of the guys with the ability to actually go deep. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I'm not saying they can't make plays over the top, but they're not going to shake loose for 70-yard touchdowns. And you've got Byron Jones and you've got Xavier Howard on the outside. And I think that's going to be a good matchup. And it's one I think does favor the Dolphins. It allows them to play more that cover zero blitz type of look too. But my concern is that Justin Herbert this year has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league against the blitz. So I'm interested to see how often the Dolphins come with that blitz.
I still am going to go back to what I said before on that. He's been one of the best against the blitz, but it's really skewed numbers when you look at the way these blitz packages were deployed from these vanilla ass defenses the past few weeks. It's disgusting. And Miami, you don't know who's coming from what level, and they get everybody up on the defensive line, and you don't even know who's coming from up front. Yeah, you can do a better job picking up the blitz when your running back can literally sit there and go, oop, that guy's running towards the line of scrimmage. It's probably him. And that's about the extent of the blitz packages you have to deal with. And Herbert can go, oop, that guy's coming. Let me use my legs and gallop over that way. I mean, he has not seen a blitz packet or a blitz scenario like he's gonna see this weekend. He hasn't seen guys that blitz in the way Miami blitzes. And to be fair, there aren't a lot of teams doing it that way. It's a big part of and he hasn't faced a defense that forces turnovers like Miami does. Let's face it, Miami's been a monster with the turnovers this year. If Miami can force a fumble and return it for a touchdown this week, they set a record. I mean, it's for the third week in a row if they do that. I mean, they don't force turnovers, and they haven't played a defense that forces a lot of turnovers. So I think the numbers don't lie, but I'm going to go back to an old saying. It's numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers. You can look at the stats for this guy in that very small set of 7 games, and he hasn't faced a lot in those games. He hasn't faced a secondary like Miami's. He hasn't faced a blitz package like Miami's. He hasn't faced a pass rush overall like Miami's. He hasn't faced that push up the middle like Miami's. And that is huge. Like, if you can let a quarterback like Herbert sit back there and chuck it over the top to guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams all day, ooh, he put up numbers. No shit.
Yeah. I think against the blitz, Herbert has seen it quickly, and he has a quicker release than I thought that he had when he came out of Oregon. That's been tightened up a little bit. And he also has the agility to bounce outside the pocket and keep his eyes downfield. The question is, like you said, I think what you've seen with the Raiders and the Bucks and the Broncos and the Jaguars the last couple is kind of how normal NFL defenses play. The Dolphins are not a normal NFL defense right now. They are fast, they are disciplined, and they can bring things from every angle. I don't see them sending 6 or 7 players as often as they have to trap a player like Kyler Murray inside. I don't think that'll work as effectively on Murray as it does or on Herbert as it did on Murray. So, but what I do think will happen in this game, and this is part of my bold prediction too, is that I think they're going to be able to come with 4 or 5 guys and still beat up the Chargers offensive line, especially if Brian Bulaga and Trey Turner are missing in action or are playing hurt. So my bold prediction is Andrew Van Ginkel gets a hat trick here. He gets 3 sacks and a forced fumble in this game. And I think that ends up making a difference late in the game as that offensive line continues to wear down. So, Paul, my prediction on this one here is I'm going to have the Chargers getting out to a lead here. in the first half, and the Dolphins and Tua are going to be playing from behind. Somewhere middle second quarter, about I'm going to say about 20-10 Chargers at one point. And then in the second half, the Dolphins start to crank the gears up. Tua has an incredible second half. Dolphins end up winning this game 37-27.
My bold prediction, God, I'm gonna throw a couple out there. It's I can't talk this much trash about their offense and not have a few defensive ones, and I still have one that's kind of offensy special teamsy. Um, it's I think that we'll stick with the defense first because you had a few there. I think Miami gets 5 sacks in this game easily. I think Agba forces yet another fumble this week. I agree with you. Zach Van Ginkel is going to be hammering Herbert coming off the edge. Um, and I think Eric Rowe gets a touchdown on one of 4+ Dolphins turnovers in this game. Like I view this game as a bloodbath. This is not the Cardinals we're facing in any way, shape, or form. They're not as good as the Cardinals in pretty much any facet of their game. Their best receiver, not as good as the Cardinals. Their quarterback, not as mobile, not as accurate, not as good as the Cardinals. Their quarterback at picking up the blitz, not as good as the Cardinals. Their offensive line, not as good as the Cardinals. Their offensive line picking up the blitz, not as good as the Cardinals. Their running game, not as good as the Cardinals. And their defense, hell no, they're not as good as the Cardinals. So it's really, I think the defense just feasts in this one. It's Miami's got one of the best defenses in the league, hands down, and Miami wins the field position game. So it's going to be a little harder to get yardage here. It's going to be a little harder to get yardage. So I'm going to add to my Jakeem Grant prediction here. I think he gets those 50 yards rushing. I think he just misses 100 yards receiving, gets about 90 yards receiving. But again, one of the things I said early in the show, their coverage units suck. And I think overall, Jakeem Grant ends up with.
Paul, what's your prediction?
Well, let me finish this bold prediction real quick. I'm almost done.
All right, I'll go make a sandwich.
I'm telling you, it's. There's like half a sentence left, and then I'll give the prediction. I think Jakeem Grant gets 275 all-purpose yards if you count return yardage in this one. And I think Miami wins this game 35-17.
35-17. I've got 37-27.
It could be worse.
Yeah, and we're both predicting him to win by considerably. I was actually, given the Chargers were 2-6 and they feel like they're due for a win, I was actually considering earlier in the week having the Chargers winning this game. But no, I think Tua ends up being able to carve up this Chargers secondary. That is going to do it for our breakdown of the Dolphins Chargers matchup here Sunday 4 Eastern time. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic_Pick. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side. Solo D, take us home.